Talktainment Radio Worldwide Sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Alrighty. Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. Interesting discussion coming up. Going to focus in on concentrate/focus. Concentrate/focus in the area of the TSA, which is to think, speak, and act in a codified way. The whole program today will be speaking and talking in codification, which you really need to understand if you're going to fight this war, which we are in. This is Talktainment Radio, radio the way it should be heard. Contact numbers are 877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Let's get this house clean out the way. People are calling in or writing in and wanting to make donations. Listen, if you are going to make donations, which we encourage you to do, particularly for the second hour, make payments to K&E World Network, LLC, comma, DBA, that is doing business as, Talktainment Radio. Now, you can, I'm not going to read them all at the same time, but throughout the show, I'm going to tell you what to do. Somebody asked me about mailing in. Okay, this is the address that you mail it into. K&E World Network, LLC, DBA, Talktainment Radio, 462 Walnut Street, Post Office Box 6184, Columbus, Ohio, 43206. Okay, and then there will be some others that I will mention later on in the program so that everybody can be covered. Okay. Mr. Neely Fuller is on the line, live from Washington, D.C. In your dealings with people, well, my dealings with people, I've been finding that there's been a lot of people that want to show off. Show off for what? You care to speak to that, about showing off? What is this?
Yeah, showing off. It's like everything else. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? So if a person wants to do what they call show off some of their material things, show off what they know that somebody else doesn't know, that's one of the show-off-isms, two of the show-off-isms. The material things you may have gained, so you look around for people and say, look at me, look what I have, look at the materials I have, look at my car, look at my house, look at my clothes, whatever it is. That's a form of showing off. Mm-hmm. So, or you can show off the knowledge. I've heard black people sometimes say to other black people, you don't know nothing. I've been here, I've been there, I've been to this place, and I know this and I know that. So they're showing off the knowledge that they have acquired.
Okay.
That, that somebody else doesn't know. And then making sexual impressions. That's a form of showing off. Sometimes black males, particularly, talk about the number, particularly in the old days, and sometimes nowadays, I guess, the number of females they have, quote unquote, conquered sexually, and etc. That's making sexual impressions and whatnot, or just strutting around. I mean, trying to attract someone's attention in a sexual manner. That's sexual show-offism. And then, of course, belittling people, the ability to belittle. I call it the four major show-offisms, particularly among black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere and possibly other parts of the world. Belittling is a form of show-offism. In other words, making another person feel like they are less than what, in your mind, you, or in the popular mind, what people ought to be. That I'm more than this, I'm more than that, and you're less than this and less than that. And you show that off. Try to make someone what they call feel bad by pumping yourself up as an example of something or a person that people should look up to. Mm-hmm. And these four show-offisms, there are other forms, I imagine, but these are four basic ones that people should get rid of, to stop showing off, period. I mean, people are more interested in showing off than they are almost anything else.
Yes, sir.
And they just dump everything in order to be able to show. I got to do something to show off. And some person might just walk down the street and nobody's paying them any attention. And everybody wants some kind of attention. Since you're babies, you come into the world wanting attention. So a person just walks into a crowd and throws a brick through a window for no obvious reason at all other than to get somebody's attention. Mm-hmm. I can just throw a brick through a window and everybody looks around and hears a glass shatter, and then they see me standing there and I did it. And so now I get your attention. I just threw that brick through that plate glass window. Well, what do you think of that? I mean, you people walking around here all day doing this and doing that, and you act like I don't even exist. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to throw that brick through that plate glass window into that, where they have a showroom, which is a form of showing, but that's business, for cars that they're selling. And I'm going to show you that I got the ability to get your attention. But then it comes down to the question of, now that you got everybody's attention, now what? And everybody should ask themselves that. When you're showing off any kind of way, your clothes, your cars, your ability to belittle people, your sexual show-offisms, now that you got everybody's attention, now what?
Okay.
When we say now what, we mean now what of constructive value.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How is this constructive? Okay. How is this improving the world in a way that it wasn't before?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you're going to show off, find out a constructive way to show off.
To show off, okay. Now today's
program, but definitely get rid of those four.
Get rid of those four, okay, and we'll have you repeat those throughout the program. Today we're going to hone in on to focus and to concentrate in the system of racism, white supremacy. And, you know, how important it is not to show off because we're not focusing on what we should be, which is to produce justice. Now, before we go there, I want to start off with where we ended up last week. Brother John wrote in and said this. He said he was reading I was reading Black Boy by Richard Wright. Though the book was written in 1945, so many truths and themes ring true today. And then on page 217, I guess, of that book, he said there's an excerpt, and it says this: white people make it their business to watch the N-word with an S and they pass the word around. Now, my boss is a Yankee, and he tells me things. Your blank marked already. It reminds me how you, Mr. Fuller, says that whites are thinking about black folks 24/7, even though blacks themselves don't believe so. Mr. Fuller, when you mentioned last week that you are familiar with Richard Wright, Mr.
Yes.
Fuller, yes, a little bit about him because a lot of people don't know. And you said you've read some of his publications.
Yeah, I've read at least 2, maybe 3 books. Native Son, Black Boy, and my favorite, my second favorite out of 4, I believe, 4 books, is 8 Men. I like that better than I did Black Boy. That's 8 stories, I think, that's in a volume that he put out.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what year it was, but it was back in the 1940s when I read it.
Mm-hmm.
Or 50s, early 50s, that particular book. And another one was White Man Listen. That's a very obscure book by Richard Wright, but it's about the Bandung Conference.
Oh, yes.
Of 1955.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a lot of essays in that book, I believe, about the state of the entire world where white and non-white are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that book is very well written. And I think it may, even today, I haven't glanced at it or looked at it. I don't even know where my copy is now. I haven't seen it in decades. But at the time, I was impressed with his writing about that.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Wright. But other than that, I know very little about Richard Wright other than he spent a lot of time in what we call France, and that's where he did a lot of his writing while he was there. But personally, I don't know very much about Richard Wright, or that I remember.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting because I hadn't at that time heard of Richard Wright, but I remember at the end of last week's program, you did had make mention of his books, and none of those were well. Obviously they wouldn't be on the list of movies, but different publications that different people have written pertaining to the subjects that you are involved in. So I just thought I would bring that up so that we could at least know who Richard Wright is, and whatever your knowledge is about him, and then find out and purchase his books. Now with the internet, you can just go on there and get all the information you need. Okay. Let's see here. Let me do this, and then let me get this Gmail. Okay. This one right here, 1-877-932-9766 is the number. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let's do this here. This comes from Daryl. He says this, Mr. Fuller, I believe you said black folks are silly about serious things and serious about silly things. Perfect example is the recent Popeye's chicken sandwich craze, which looks like something straight out of the 1915 Birth of a Nation movie. There were Negroes fighting each other while standing in long lines for this $4 sandwich, and one guy even climbed through a drive-through window so he wouldn't have to wait as long. I'm shocked that in all that madness, nobody got shot. That's how ridiculous it was. We gave Popeyes $23 million in free advertising within a few days over this foolishness. So my question, Mr. Fuller, is, should we continue to wait and expect for our folk to get on code, or should we leave some Negroes behind to die off, because the likelihood of them ever getting on code is slim to none, and all most of them will do is to drag the rest of us down who are out here trying to be constructive and replace the system of white supremacy with justice? Who'd rather live up to the old stereotypes of black folk cooning over fried chicken than solve the real problems? You being a military man, I think you'd have a interesting take about having to leave some people in your unit behind when in the midst of war. Mr. Fuller? Mr. Fuller?
I hear a lot of distortions.
Okay, I'm not hearing any distortions on this end.
I hear a lot of distortions.
Okay. But did you hear the question by Daryl about this Popeye's chicken and his observations as to
I'm
what...
not familiar with that ad or whatever it was that happened. But I heard something about black people leaving the other black people behind. Well, we don't really have them to leave behind. I always try to remind, for a frame of reference, the way to look at it is that all of the black people on the planet are milling around in a prison yard. That's all we're really doing. We're just milling around in a prison yard. And we're all prisoners wearing the same uniform, which is the color of our skin. That's our prison uniform. And it doesn't make any difference what we think about anything to the masters of the prison, because we're just milling around in the prison yard, just finding little trivial things to do when we're milling around in the prison yard, which is the entire planet. That's all we're really doing, just milling around, just walking around, after we're let out of our cages, our greater confinement, you might say, and just walking around in the prison yard, which is the entire earth for a black person, and just doing little trivial things like people do when they're given an hour or two to walk around in the prison yard. That's all we are doing. We're not doing anything else other than that. If we look at it that way, and look at it that way, seeking the truth, is that what we're really doing? Yes. The answer is that's what we're really doing in the system of white supremacy, because we're all subject to white supremacy.
Yes.
So therefore, one black person milling around in the prison yard may decide that he just wants to jump up and down and stand on his head and or spin around and clap his hands. Another black person wants to sit quietly over near the prison wall and just meditate.
Yes.
Okay? Another black person wants to shoot marbles. And then maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 20 black people want to start a small riot, start fighting. So they're over there in their little section of the prison yard, and they're fighting. Okay? And they do this every other day or so. And then other black people are in a little group talking about the state of the world outside the prison, meaning whatever white people are doing, because they're not doing anything and can't do anything because they're confined. They're in the prison.
Yes.
So that's all we really have.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at it that way and see if it's really that way, and it is, in my opinion. We are all subject to the system of white supremacy. I don't know of any black people anywhere on the planet who are not. So it just comes down to what are we doing in this prison system, this slave system, called this concentration camp, called the system of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
So until the actual system is dismantled by whomever comes up with a formula for doing so and replaced with justice, then, like I say on the back of the textbook for victims of white supremacy, we're just milling around in the prison system wasting time.
Okay.
Because anything that's not designed to rid the world of racism from black people's perspective and from the perspective of logic is a waste of time.
All right.
So we're just finding activities to do in the prison yard while we're wasting time.
Okay. So now he asked if you can hear me, and I'm going to speak as loudly as I can on purpose so that you can hear. His question was, should we continue to wait and expect for our folk to get on code, or should we leave some Negroes behind to die off because the likelihood of them getting on code is slim to none?
Well, we can't. See, that's why I made that prison yard analogy.
Okay.
How can one prisoner leave another prisoner behind when we're all prisoners? See, we're not leaving anything because nobody's leaving the prison.
Yes.
The system of white supremacy is still the most powerful political and religious force on planet Earth in 2019.
Okay.
It's the most powerful political.
Okay.
By political, we means it takes in all the people of the entire planet.
Okay. I just want to...
religious.
Yes.
When it comes to a strong belief backed up by action. There is no system more powerful than the system of white supremacy.
Okay.
So as long as black people are the prisoners of war, milling around in the prison yard, well, one black person will say, well, I'm serious about our situation, and you know what? The rest of these prisoners in here are not serious about our situation. They're clowning and carrying on buffoonery, but I'm trying to figure out how to dismantle this system, this prison system, and come up with a better system of existing on this planet. And maybe 10 or 12, or maybe 2 or 3,000, or maybe even the majority of the prisoners say that. And they'll say, but they got about 1 or 2 dozen who are not interested in ridding the world of racism at all. And so you're not actually leaving them behind. You're just saying that's what they are doing.
Okay.
Because we're all still in prison. So this thing about some of us got more power than others, forget that, because that's not happening.
Okay.
In the system of white supremacy.
All right. Thank you, Daryl, for your question. Let's go to the phone. Oh, wait a minute. Let's do this. TalkTeamRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge worldwide broadcast facility with those delivering on topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, politics. Now, here's a couple I'm going to share with you. This is Libby. Yeah, get in contact with Libby Rand. Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby. Talking Sports Plus with Mr. Bobby. That's me. As a matter of fact, we'll be on September the 3rd, so check that out. And also, Stairway to Heaven. These shows are exclusive to TalkTeamRadio.com. All you have to do is go to the TalkTeamRadio.com homepage, click on programs, and you're there. Hit the subscribe and like button. All this, TalkTeamRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We're discussing concentrate and focus. And we have a caller on the line. A caller, I'm up against a break, but I'm hearing a lot of distortion, so move away from it. We're up against the break, but I'm going to let your call go through. What is your question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
Hello?
Yeah, you're going to have to back away from the phone because I'm hearing a lot of distortion. Okay, go ahead. What's your question?
Back away?
Just a little bit because we're hearing a lot of distortion. What's your question for Mr. Fuller?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, hi, Mr. Neely Fuller.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
I can hear you.
I'm a little nervous, but it's such an honor to
It's okay. Being nervous is okay, but what is your question?
But my question is to you. I'm just truly grateful to be here and to be able to speak with you. I love your concepts and your ideas. It has really enhanced me to be better at this, at understanding this system as a global system of white supremacy. I'm hurting right now. I had lost a friend, and I'm going through like a deep feeling and emotion due to this system. He was a warrior. He did everything he could to be a man, to live a life as he should. But sadly, he just went through a lot of depression, and it just led to him not wanting to live. And I'm angry for that. I'm angry at white supremacy for that. I'm angry at this prison system. I'm only 26 years old, and I have always known that I was in a prison system. But I went along with a lot of things based on my peers and things that I was taught. But I have always known that this was not the right way of living. But my question is to you, I don't want to be too long. My question is, how am I supposed to conduct myself in a constructive manner without having so much emotions and hatred towards this system? Because I'm a very rebellious person to this system, and I refuse to be handled in a way, but yet I want to survive, and I want to be able to conduct myself and be able to give, people whatever they can out of me, whether it was, speak, like thought, anything, like, I don't know, like just me speaking through them to them. I just need help understanding how I'm supposed to conduct myself while being in the hands of these people. Like, the system is insane, and it's hard to maneuver through this life, working, just based on all the nine areas of activity. And I just need to understand how I'm supposed to conduct myself.
Okay.
Without being too emotional as a woman.
Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have Mr. Neely Fuller answer your question after we take this break, because we are up against the break right now. So I will have, just hang on. I'll have Mr. Fuller address that so that we can get some answers for you.
Just do the best she can in this prison system. And in a prison system, there are going to be very unfortunate things that are going to happen all the time. That's the setup in a prison. No one is supposed to be happy in a prison. Happiness is out of the question. That's something, feeling good about anything is not supposed to exist. This is the nature of a prison. You just get a little relief and hope that one of these days you can not be in the prison. But as long as you're in the prison, the whole purpose of a prison for the prisoner is to never feel good about anything and to always be in a state of anxiety, of wanting, of longing for something that you don't have. That's the nature of a prison. That's why the prison is a prison. And when you look at it the way that it is, the system of white supremacy is a prison system. So, if a fellow prisoner, if you hear about something unfortunate happening, them being beat to death by one of the guards, or falling off of a scaffold in an accident, or just dying from neglect, or some other prisoner stabs him or her to death in one of the cell blocks, that goes with the territory. That's the nature of a prison. That's why we got to get out of this idea that we are not in a prison. Of course we are, because we keep looking for some kind of relief. It's none there. Zero. It's not supposed to be any relief in a prison. You have to get rid of the entire prison system and replace it with what? A system that's not a prison system which would be a system of justice. Replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice, which means what? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, how do you bring this about while you're in the prison? By doing everything that you possibly can that is of constructive value. Because any time, as a prisoner of war, you're doing something of constructive value, learning how to do things of constructive value, you are setting yourself up, and if you can influence other prisoners to do everything that is of constructive value, stop the little prison riots, stop the little prison animosities, running around trying to plot against other prisoners and stab them in the back and all this type of stuff. or just playing little silly games all the time and being and looking forward to doing nothing but enjoying these little silly games like people do in prison, because they're not allowed to do anything else but just do things that are a little trivial, childish, silly. Just go to the prison library, study, like Andy Dufresne did in the movie Shawshank Redemption, and study how things work. Study economics, study whatever. Try to learn everything that's going on about the prison so that the prison will not be a prison anymore, because nothing is supposed to happen, and you shouldn't look forward to anything happening in this prison system that's going to make you happy. It's not supposed to happen. You can't find happiness in a prison without being labeled as and functionally being insane. Because the prison is designed to punish you for just existing. That's the prescription.
Yes, sir.
Punishment. They call it reform school sometimes and all like that. But, reforming you to adjust to what? The system of white supremacy? Because that's what the system of white supremacy does.
Yes, sir.
So do everything, bottom line, everything that is a constructive value once you can figure out what is constructive and what isn't.
All right.
And just engage in everything that's constructive and everything that's non-constructive, don't engage in it.
Okay.
Because anytime you're black on this planet and you're doing something of constructive value, you are putting white supremacy in big-time danger.
All right, there you go, my sister, and I hope that you take heed to that advice. Mr. Fuller, 1-877-932-9766, the number you can get through, or you should be able to get through. If not, 7 Mr. Bobby, BOBBY at gmail.com. This comes from Harry. He says this, Mr. Fuller. He said, I know you're a busy man, Mr. Fuller, and that movie list of yours is probably in the 50s, if not the hundreds by now. But I have another suggestion for you. The movie is called Us, U.S., written and directed by the same person who did Get Out, which I know you still haven't gotten around to seeing. But if you were ever a fan of or watched Alfred Hitchcock's movies or The Twilight Zone by a TV series, that is what this movie, Us, will remind you of, but starring a black cast. I think there are several meanings in this movie as it relates to African Americans and our double identities. The movie came out earlier this year and is now on DVD and Blu-ray. Here's hoping at some point you'll be able to watch it at least 2 or 3 times of the movies on your list. And I hope on the future show you discuss the meaning of some of these films or give your perspective on some of the movies that you have watched. Okay, just for the record, Mr. Fuller, have you seen this movie called Us?
No, I haven't. And there are dozens of movies that I probably need to see and whatnot, but I probably won't. But the fact that this person, see, this is a part of the codification here on this program. Anybody who comes in on the program and they have seen a movie that has lessons that black people can pay attention to, where they can walk out of the movie and say, that movie made me think of things I never thought of. And that is that it's best to do this and not do this, because everything comes down to doing this and not doing the other. Constructive, non-constructive. There's no such thing as in between. Every move that you make, every minute of the day, anywhere on the planet, is going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. And when you sit and look at a movie, just don't look for the drama itself. Of course, the drama is important in getting you interested in the movie. But what is the lesson in this particular scene? And there are a lot of lessons in just about many, many movies and things going on around you every day. These are stories. These are stories in the making. Just things you're looking at every day. I mean, while you're riding a bus and you see a couple of people having a conversation, And you say, now that is not the way to go about doing anything. You can, just listening to the conversation, you can come to that conclusion. There's a lesson in that. They're talking loud and whatnot, and the things that they're saying, you may listen, and it may be something of constructive value, because you're going to learn something just from looking at it. And it's going to be in one of those two categories, just from listening to people talking loud on a public transportation. And you're going to learn something that can be used constructively, or you're going to learn how not to do things from what you're looking at. And it's the same with movies. It's the same with what happens on the job. It's the same in every situation that you're in. These are movies. People are moving around all the time doing things. So it's not just what's on a screen, where you learn lessons, or in what you call a school, because the whole world is a school. It's the universe. That's why they call certain school buildings, what? Universities. Everything going on around you, you should learn the difference between what is going on that's constructive and what is not.
Okay. TalkTameAtRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTameAtRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Our topic today is concentrate and focus. And we'll have Mr. Fuller address these issues, which he has been so far in the 44 minutes that we have been on. But it is at this time, every program that we have here on Talktainment Radio for Mr. Fuller, that we have Mr. Fuller address this wonderful book that, this is me, I personally feel you need in your library in order to look at it and get suggestions on what to do in your struggle to fight racism and replace the system of racism with justice. Mr. Fuller, go ahead and take the mic about your book.
Okay. The book you can get, and I'm talking to all the things that I'm saying, most of the things that I'm saying are in the book every week. They are in the book, one way or another, either directly or indirectly. And a lot of the questions that people are asking, the answers are in the book itself. And lots of suggestions about what to do and what not to do on a daily basis in the 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And it's written in such a way like a buffet, you might say. You just go down the line and pick out things through the book that make the most sense to you. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't touch it. But if it makes sense to you, you try it, see if it works, and if it works, then you do that to help do what? Solve problems, because everything is about problem solving, each and every day. All things are about some type of problem. Just catching a bus on time, that could be a problem. Just picking something up off the floor so that you don't slip on it. Because whatever you're leaving there on the floor can be an obstacle that can send you to the hospital. So you pick it up so you don't trip over it and hit your head somewhere. Now you have solved the problem. All day long, for the prisoners of war in the system of white supremacy, you should be thinking of, how can I solve a problem? We should become problem-solving people. And there's a slogan in the book saying, solve problems without making any, because you have to be careful about that. You can solve one problem, but in the process of solving one problem, you made 3 new problems, and you don't want to do that. That means you have to do some thinking. The book is supposed to help you do that. Solve problems without making any. And so you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. And the book is directed to individual persons who perceive themselves to be directly, indirectly, victims of the system of white supremacy. Because that's what we need. We need a code That's what I call it. I call it the code. Sometimes I call it the counter-racist code.
Yes, sir.
I give all kinds of definitions for it. But it's just a way of getting things done.
Yes, sir.
Each and every day. Go to producejustice.com.
Okay.
And that's how you can get the book.
Okay, before I take this phone call, Mr. Fuller, I've been getting a lot of people that have talked about, and you have addressed this particular subject on your book, or in your book, or rather on your book, asking, why isn't health mentioned in the book in one of the areas, one of the 9 areas. But as I have read the book and understand, get clarity of the book and of your suggestions, teachings, and so forth, I'm learning that health is actually in the book. The health of economics, the health of education, entertainment, the health of labor, the health of law, the health of politics, the health of religion, the health of sex, and the health of war, counter war. Would that be a maybe it's VGQ, but in my way of thinking according to compensatory logic, would that be on the correct path?
What be on the correct path?
The thinking that health is in the book, in speaking of the economic health, entertainment health, education health, labor, and so forth, all the 9 areas. The health in that, addressing people who say the health is not in the book, and it actually is.
Yes, that's the way I've described it. Many people have talked to me down through the years and said, Fuller, you could have added a 10th one, round that out to 10 rather than 9, and make health a part, one of the major areas of activity. But I looked at that, over a period of years, and I said, well, if you got everything the way it ought to be in the other 9 areas of activity, and this is what it's going to require, all of those 9 areas have to be cleaned up and made what they ought to be, then you automatically have health.
Yes.
Or you can pick out any one of them and do what it is that's the most constructive thing to do, and you automatically got health. That's whether it's in sex or religion or labor or economics. Yes. Economics is health. Yes. If your economics is correct, you are a healthy person.
Yes. That's why it's important to get the book, because I didn't get that right away. It took me a while to get it by reading the book, and then I saw it. Anyway, caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
I have 2 questions. Concentration and focus. That brother before gave a critical analogy of Birth of a Nation and the Popeye situation. I didn't know that went down with Popeye.
Yes.
But Dr. Neely Fuller was talking about they were milling around in the yard and so forth. They were milling around in the yard, and it's a whole prison system, and you have to get rid of the prison system. But if you don't have the people in a collective code of mind, and Brother Polite was saying that you have to get the people who, it's never been a massive amount of people to make a change. It's been those intellectuals to get on code and make the change, and then the masses follow. So when you say people are on the yard playing marbles and somebody is doing something else and so forth, well, what about the different groups that are in the prison? When in the Shawshank Redemption movie, the guy went and started a library. So he's doing something. White supremacy is not going to just lay down and give you their system and give in their system to justice. So I want to know, how does he, equate with that, get rid of the system by not doing, by people not being on code, if you will,
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Well, if I understand the question, what is needed is a code of behavior that's addressed to each individual person. That's what I tried to do with the textbook, because that's what I call it, the compensatory code, counter-racist code, because I say that is the one thing that is missing. We have been kind of trained by the white supremacists to always look for the maximum leader or some magic group, quote unquote, magic group of black people who are the center stage of what all the other black people should be doing. That doesn't work that way in the system of white supremacy, in the prison yard. You have to actually codify each individual. And the formula is real simple. Each individual in the prison just takes a vow to him or herself, since they are not beholden to the other prisoners anyway, so that's not going to ever work. All that's going to do is just get a good fight between the prisoners. And anybody who has tried, and black people have been trying that like forever, trying to herd other black people, saying, do it my way, do it my way, do it my way, or we're going to ostracize you. Well, that's like one prisoner saying, I'm going to ostracize the other prisoner. Ostracize them by doing what? You ain't running no prison. By doing what? All you can do is just wait in the prison yard and then sneak up behind the other prisoner and kill him. Now you got to answer to the prison masters for having done that. We should have learned by now that you can't herd people into doing anything. You can't force them to do nothing. You ain't got that kind of muscle, all right? So what you do is influence people, hey, do the best thing for yourself. And then once you do the best thing for yourself by not harming others, and do the best thing for yourself by having a code for doing that, then you can better help others. That way, everybody becomes codified in the prison on their own, because they're not following a person or a group. They're following a code. You dedicate yourself to a code. You say, this is something I just don't do. I just don't do this. Doesn't make any difference what everybody else is doing. I don't do that. And then you have a list of things that you do. That's the formula. And if everybody, and so the things that you do will work for you, and almost everybody, I guess, on the planet, unless somebody who is just patently suicidal wants to do something that makes everything better for him or herself. So just do the things that are better for yourself without harming others. That's the essence of justice, all right? And then you show others how to do what you just did. That's it. And then each one teach one. That's all codification is about. And you just tell them. Really, I don't like the word teach. I just say tell. A person, you take a little child that wants to cross the street, and they toddle across the street, and dodging all these cars, and then what you do is just tell the person, if you go to the corner, there's a street light there, and you don't have to dodge those cars every day. And the person says, oh, I didn't know that. Just tell people what they don't know. If you know it, that's code. And just do that all day, every day. Part of the code is stop withholding constructive information. That's one of the main things in becoming a universal man and a universal woman. And that's what we should tell definitely when we're talking to white people. Always, two things. Sir, ma'am, please don't ever say anything to me or any other black person or non-white person that's not true. Yes. That's number one.
Wait a minute. Hang on, Mr. Fuller. We'll let you get number two right after we pause for the second hour. And caller, you hang on too for your second question. TalkTainMenTRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned for the second hour. Hang on, caller.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. the world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTameItRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTameItRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTameItRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
All right. Welcome to the second hour of the Compensatory Concept here on Talk Team at Radio with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the way it should be heard. 1-877-932-9766 is the number to call, or 7 Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com if you want to get in contact with me. You may not get read today. We do have a call on the line, which I'm going to get to. Mr. Fuller's going to answer to the second part of his question, so hang on to that. I have to tell you this is the donate hour, so don't forget you can make a donation by electronic check, K&E World Network, LLC, edozier 625 at gmail.com. There are 3 different ones that I will read at different points. I'm not going to read them all right now. Okay, Mr. Fuller, our focus today is concentrate and focus. So, Mr. Fuller, sorry about the break, but we had to do that to get the second hour going. Now, go ahead and answer that, and then I'll have the brother get his second question in. What was your second point, Mr. Fuller?
Well, the second point, first point was that if you're around white people where, you work with white people and they want to be what you call, friendly and not have any animosity, they want everything to work smoothly and whatnot, like on a job or something like that, just try to get that white person that you are, quote, unquote, close to. If you are on a first-name basis with him or her, then there's 2 things. If they bring it up, about how things can improve between black people and white people on this race issue, because some white people say that black people are always beating up on us, but they don't ever have anything to say. That's constructive or positive and whatnot. They just running around talking about Black Lives Matter. And fist in the air and foaming at the mouth and talking about white folks ain't right and all like this, and say, well, I'm not trying to do any harm to you. I'm not trying to harm you and whatnot, so what can I do? You don't leave me with anything to work with. What can I do to help? Well, there's 2 things right out of the gate. Don't ever lie if you're white. Mm-hmm. And this is what you ask a white person. If you're on a first-name basis with them or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, don't lie.
You have some type of constructive interaction.
Yes.
Okay? So you say, don't ever say anything to me that is not true. Mm-hmm. If I ask you a question, when you give me an answer, make sure that answer is truthful.
Okay.
All right? Since you asked, all right, since we're talking on this cordial basis. Number 2, don't withhold constructive information. Alice, if you get constructive information about these promotions and whatnot and what it takes to get one and all like that, and this little school that they have on weekends, that's set up by this corporation that nobody knows anything about, but just a handful of people.
Yeah.
You come to me, Alice, and let me know the minute you find out something like that, and then walk me through it.
Yes, sir.
Information is power. So don't ever say anything that's not true, and don't withhold constructive information.
Yes, sir.
These are 2 things that help anybody on the planet anywhere. People not lying to you, ever, You go to the car repair shop. Nobody tells you a lie. All right? Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, good
all
luck.
Right? Now, the white people who do not do this, they stay on that suspect list of being racist, period. And they don't come off of it until the end of racism. That's the deal.
That's the deal. Okay.
And you let them know in a nice, and without shouting or getting mad or name calling, you just say, Alice, you said a lot of things to me last year that were not true. I found out they weren't true. And we had talked about this. And I let you know that if you did that just one time, that you would be on a racist suspect list, and that's where you are, and that's where we are.
Okay.
Now, if you want to come off that list, then you have to start telling me the truth as of now.
Yeah, that's the first one. Tell the truth. What's your second question, brother?
I want to expound on that. There is no way that you can be on code by yourself. The exemplary illustration of that are the Royal Somali, who came over here 23, 30 years ago and have built up a culture or a nation within inside a nation. But my second question, last week you said that I don't particularly, assist in the, agreement of cutting the check for reparations. Like I feel it should be divided into three things, medical health, and that, appropriate funds should be given for health. And I was wondering who would appropriate these funds to African descendants of slaves? Who would appropriate these funds for medical, for medical services, for businesses? Who would be the appropriator of the funds?
Okay, Mr. Fuller.
If not white supremacists.
Okay, Mr. Fuller.
It would be the white supremacists. I mean, there are nobody. We are in a prison system. Non-white people, the black people of this planet, are in a prison system. Prisoners don't own anything. There's no such thing as prisoners owning something. Once you become a prisoner of war, you don't own anything. You don't have anything except your uniform. That's the only thing you have, and that's your black skin. Everything that you see around you on this planet no longer comes under any power that you have because you don't have any. All you got is a prison uniform. That's what anybody that's been in any kind of prison knows that. Once they strip you down, and put on the label uniform, that number across your chest or your back and all like that, that's all you got. You're just a number.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a wife, you don't have children, you don't have anything. And so that's the way we have to look at it, because that's the way it is if you're black on this planet. So you don't appropriate nothing. There's no way to do that. Everything comes from the white supremacists. You hear black people talking about, I own some land. You don't own anything if you're black on this planet. Why? Because the question comes down, I'm talking about following logic and following evidence.
Yes, sir.
Who owns you? Because whatever you say you own owns everything that you have, because they own you.
Yes, sir.
And the white supremacists come under, every black person I've ever heard of comes under the power of the white supremacists.
That's right.
I don't know of a single black person on this planet who is not under the power of the white supremacists.
Okay. We're talking about focus and concentration today. And Mr. Fuller, when he was speaking of his book, and really, when you get the book, and if you do read it, and you should read it, you will understand. It may take a while, the theme into that, as he has addressed this book is not for the group, it's for the individual. Before we take this next call, Mr. Fuller, can you explain how important that is to have that knowledge that this is addressed to the individual and what the individual can do?
It's addressed to the individual, and I say this is something that's a breakthrough if we do it.
Yes,
And
yes.
I say that it's the key to solving the race problem. I mean, and do it fast. I mean, not dragging it on from generation to generation. I'm talking about taking care of this in a slam dunk. And that is the one thing we have overlooked, and that is the need for the individual to have a code.
Yes.
And what is a code? Do's and don'ts. That's all it is. That's all any kind of code is. Something that you do, something that you don't do.
Exactly. That's it.
Things that you do, things that you don't do every day. Things that you say, things that you don't say every day.
Every day.
All the things that you don't say, you don't say them. All the things that you say them.
Mm-hmm.
All the things that you do them. All the things that you don't do them. That's a code.
Again,
the white supremacists understand this. This is why they're successful.
Exactly. Again,
they're nothing but walking. They're just like a computer. Do's and don'ts.
Mm-hmm.
Do's and don'ts. There's certain things they ain't going to do. Period. All right?
Yes.
And certain things they're going to do. We don't have anything like that.
Nothing.
We just walk around every day bumping into things and hope that it works out all right. We don't have a set of do's and don'ts for anything except something that's pure foolishness.
Or show off. This is why it is important, this particular program. Concentrate and focus in on what you should do. Caller, you're
individual.
on. Individual. Right. Yes,
right.
Individual. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. My question to Mr. Fuller is this. Mr. Fuller, do you think that white supremacy is in line or out of line with universal logic?
Whoa.
They are in line with universal logic when it comes to doing things that they want done. Logic just means a way of getting things done. They are out of line with doing the correct thing.
Yes.
All right? But because everything that the white supremacists do is to glorify white supremacists.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
What is the purpose of white supremacy? That's the question. It's to have fun, to get glory, and to have material comfort by doing what? By dominating and mistreating people who they classify as non-white. That's it. And it has turned out to be the most powerful political and religious idea ever conceived in the minds of people. And they've set up a code for doing that. Just a set of do's and don'ts for every white person. And they don't have to just walk around saying that every day. It's built into the ideology. Once you set your goal, which is to dominate and mistreat people of color in order to get fun, glory, and material comfort, then all you do then is just fill in all the blanks on the do's and don'ts for doing that. Certain things you do when the black people, when you interact with them, certain things you don't do. Certain things you say every day in the office or wherever you happen to be, certain things you don't say. And that's it. It's real simple. I mean, it is super simple. There's nothing complicated about it. Here comes the black people. All right. Code time. White code time. You say this to black people. If you want to have them laughing, say this, that, and the other. If you want to have them crying, say this, that, and the other. If you want to have them being cooperative with you and all like that and worshiping you, say this and say that. Do this and do that. If you want to have them copying the things you do, I mean, and to their detriment and all like that, the things you want them to do that nobody should be doing,
yes,
but you want them to do it.
Yes.
Say this, say that, put this on your movies, put this on TV, do this, do that. It's nothing but do's and don'ts.
That's it.
For a white person.
You're right.
And then they got a set of do's and don'ts for black people. And we fall right into the set that they have for us doing and don't.
Yes. They
tell us what's important and what isn't, what to wear, what you should think about buying next holiday, all like that. And we rush out, I mean, trying to figure out a way how we're going to rob somebody to get enough money to buy that thing that's the latest thing. and the person that you're going to rob is going to be somebody black, because they got it all set up for you to be on that side of town where that's all you're going to run into anyway. There's a whole bunch of down and out black people just like you're down and out. Okay? Yes. We haven't caught on to that yet.
Not yet. If you missed the first hour, and in particular the first statement, Mr. Fuller explained about show off. And as he's talking now, this is why it is important not to show off or the show off isms. Maybe we'll have him go back over that again. Let's see here. What I have to do this here. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here we go. TalkTameRadio.com is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's several that I want to share with you. It's your time to travel with host Ricky Tyus. Wiggins World. Stacey Wiggins gets all into all aspects of wellness, all aspects, mental, physical, spiritual, the whole gambit. You need to check the brother out. And, of course, new money. You need to know what money is and how it works. Oh, yeah, you need to know that. That is with hosts Drew and Janae. Now, these shows really are exclusive to TalkTameRadio.com. Now, you're not going to know that unless you go to the TalkTameRadio.com homepage, view the programming there, these and other ones that I may have suggested, and give them a sample to see what they're all about. Focus and concentrate on that to help better yourself in your struggle in this against racism, which is white supremacy. Again, these are exclusive to TalkTameRadio.com. So just go there, click on programs, and you're there. That's from Talktainment Radio. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and we have been discussing to concentrate and focus. Get away from show-offisms and all that. Concentrate and focus in the system, in the war that you're against, that is against you, racism and white supremacy. You need to focus on it to know what to do. And Mr. Fuller will again explain, as he's been explaining, that this is for the individual. The clarity of that has got to come through. Until you understand that, then it's going to be difficult for individual, what you can do in your struggle in this, because that is very powerful. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Dr. Fuller, the last time you was on, I hear people all the time saying that white supremacy doesn't exist. And I was looking around my house the last time you were on, and I thought to myself, everything in this house comes from companies that are owned by people who classify themselves as white. All the paint on the walls, the carpet on the floor, all the dishes, the silverware, the refrigerator, stove, refrigerator, even the trash can that sits in the kitchen, Rubbermaid, CEO of that company is white. All the shoes under the bed itself, the car I drive, the job that I got to go to, this English language that's coming out of this brown-skinned body that's not supposed to be going on. I drove over the road for 5 years. From New York to California, and from the state of Washington all the way to Miami, Florida, every inch of land, 99% of it is owned by people who classify themselves as white. All the resources in the land, all the gold, all the diamonds, all the oil, all the natural gas, all the fruit trees, and then people want to say that white supremacy don't exist.
Yes, sir. People will say that. Well, then, but what does the code say what is your response? You say, okay, well, that comes under VGQ. That's the person's opinion. So it means that if it does exist, I guess, I don't know what they mean when they say that, but I take it for what it's worth. And I take it, the person is talking, the person says, it doesn't exist. So it doesn't exist. In their minds, it doesn't exist. So you don't argue with the person. That's part of the code. When a person says to me, I'll give a direct codified response. Example. when a person says that white supremacy does not exist, what you say is, well, there's no point in talking about white supremacy if it doesn't exist. And then you don't talk about it to that person. So you're not supposed to try to prove to a black person that white supremacy exists. What you pay attention to is whatever they complain about. That's when you talk about, okay, you got a complaint. What's your complaint? And who are you having your complaint about? Does it involve other people? And who are these people that you are complaining about? Okay? And a lot of times a black person might say, well, it's my neighbors. And you say, well, who are your neighbors? And say, well, they're black people. Oh, all right. Black people are your neighbors. Okay. How did black people become your neighbors? Okay. But go on. What are you complaining about? Well, they're just tearing up the neighborhood, and they're not keeping the property values up. I mean, and every time I go to the bus stop, I get robbed. Oh, you get robbed every time you go to the bus stop. Oh, who robs you? Other black people. Wait a minute. Other black people. Did you say black? Did you just use the word black, sir? Yeah, they're the ones. They're the ones doing all this. I mean, I know where you're going. You're going to say, the white man set it all up and all like that. But it's these black people doing these things to me. And I'm sick of it. And I'm tired of putting up with it. Well, now, okay. Well, who do you think can cure whatever this problem is that you say you have? Because, hey, I live just in the same block that you live in, and I'm putting up with the same thing. But you said white supremacy doesn't exist. So who do we go to? Who do we go to? You and me. I mean, to take care of this, to stop this. Well, I mean, somebody ought to do. Wait a minute. Somebody like who? See, little by little, the code says what? All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. And if you ask enough questions and get enough answers, where you're going to go is to the truth. And so it's nothing like a person discovering themselves through their own experience what the real deal is. That's why the code says never argue with another black person when that person says racism doesn't exist. Just let them keep doing what they're doing wherever they are. Don't try to convince them of anything. Yeah. And it's been my experience, black people sometimes 10 years later have come to me and say, you know what you say is true, but I didn't see it at the time.
Yes.
I already knew that.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, let me pause for just a second here. I've been blasted with a tremendous amount of Gmails. All I'm going to say is, people, they have mentioned, Mr. Fuller, that two shows are overlapping, one tape and one live. I'm going to say this, that the usual suspects, if you can hear me, are in play, even way down there in French Guiana, Mitro. The usual suspects are in play to interfere with the message that Mr. Fuller is delivering. They don't want you, the usual suspects do not want you to get this message. So if they can disrupt it by any means necessary, Anthony and JR, Mitro and Mr. Talifero, if they can, and anybody else who's listening, if they could job it up so that his messages will not get through, then that's what they're going to do. But bear with us. We're trying to do all that we can do on this end. But the fact of the matter is that Neely Fuller Jr.'s message is being effective, and they want to disrupt it any way that they can do it. Now, that is the truth. We're obligated to tell the truth. That's the truth. That is the truth. So bear with us. We're trying to do the best that we can. I apologize for the interference, but it is them that is doing that to make it look like it's somewhere else. Hiding in plain sight. Yeah, that's what's going on. You didn't know this, Mr. Fuller, and I didn't. I wasn't aware of it until just now when a bevy of Gmails come through. But that is to be expected for the usual suspects to do things like this. Am I correct on that, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir. I mean, if it's true that what I'm saying is taking effect, is taking some type of small root, the white supremacists themselves are now using the term white supremacy, which is what they have not been doing in years, but it's all over the news, whatnot. So the code says when they start using a term, look out. They are getting ready to put their spin on it of what a white supremacist is and what a white supremacist is not. They're going to try to take that away from what I have in the textbook. But I'm telling black people, stick with the textbook definition. Racism is white supremacy, and white supremacy is racism, because they're doing it it's my prediction, little by little, they're saying there is such a thing as white supremacy, but then I don't know, I can't predict how they're going to do it, but they're going to put it in some type of neat little box where it becomes an ineffective term. They're going to, so that at some point they can say, well, we just about took care of that white supremacy thing, so now we can move on to something else. See, that's the white supremacist technique. They are the masters of words. But now, I haven't heard them use yet the term code. See what I mean? Counter-racist code. Or even address black people having a code. Each and every individual.
Here we go.
They will address groups. They will talk about some black leader. Oh, they don't mind that at all. They'll say, yeah, well, one of the black leaders said this and one of the black leaders said that. They like that black leader thing because they can deal with that.
Yes.
They know that they can take care of all that black leader thing because, see, they are masters of psychology. They know people's minds. So they know that when they set up some black person and even recognize a black person as being a leader or a spokesperson, they know that black people will look at that person, find some fault in that person, and then they will start taking sides about who they're going to back. This black person or that black person. No, Mr. So-and-so or Reverend so-and-so or Professor so-and-so, yeah, that's my man. That's the one that should be talking for me. I mean, that Negro that y'all backing over there on the other side of town, he don't know nothing, or she don't know nothing, and so the white supremacists like that kind of confusion.
Yes, sir.
But see, when you codify each and every black person, so that every move that they make is going to have a constructive effect on black people, that's what the white supremacists do not want. They don't want each and every black person to become his or her own leader. And this is super important. This is what the entire code book is about. That every black person on the planet knows exactly what to do and what not to do in every circumstance that they encounter.
Yes, sir.
That should be the goal.
Yes, sir.
And the white supremacists are out of business when that happens. They're not going to be out of business until that happens.
That's it.
So they don't mind so-called organizations and then black people arguing about which black organization is better than the other one. All right? And so that can go on forever.
Okay.
And the white supremacists exploit that.
All right, got to leave
they
it.
will build up one or two black people and put them all over television and say, these are the recognized black leaders.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, I have a couple of questions for you. It says, Mr. Fuller, have you ever met or do you know of a white person that is not a racist? By racist, I mean that individual white person has never mistreated any non-white person in their life because of their color.
Do I know a white person who has never practiced racism?
Basically, that is the question. One of the questions.
The answer is no.
Okay. Second question, Mr. Fuller, if there exists such a thing as a white person that does not practice or has never practiced white supremacy racism, would it be accurate to say this group of whites are so few, if they exist at all, that they are statistically insignificant?
Well, if I know the answer to that question, if I understand the question, there are huge numbers of white people who do not practice racism. And I'll tell you the categories right off the bat, who they are. They are white people who are so elderly that they do not know one color from the other. In other words, they have reached a point in their existence on the planet where, for some reason or another, they can't tell the difference in colors. You have to know colors. You have to know the difference between white and non-white. And it has to have some significance in your mind. Otherwise, you cannot practice racism. Now, who would be in those categories? And they are in the categories of the millions, even as we speak. And they are, and this includes even white people who walked around and openly said they hated black people. Say, for example, a white person who said that he or she hated black people at age 50. That person is 50 years old. Now that person is, they said that at one time when they were 50 years old. And they practiced racism all that time and said that they were racist, admitted it to the entire world. Then one day as time passed by, they got to be, say, 106 years old. And they lost the ability to tell one color from another. In fact, they lost the ability to tell a spoon from a fork. They don't remember anything. They have Alzheimer's, you might say, disease, or some other form of disease where they no longer have a memory. Now, you can't accuse that white person, logically speaking, of being racist because the person doesn't know a door from a doorknob. The person is sitting there in a wheelchair all day staring into space. They can't tell a tree from a car. So that person is not a racist. You can say the person used to be. But that person, everything in codification is logic now. That person is not a racist. You cannot accuse that person of being a racist. You can accuse that person of having once been a racist. Now, that's one category. The other category, according to logic, everything in codification goes according to logic, not based on feeling and emotions. It's logic. The other category is a newborn white baby. You go into a ward and a baby is just born, came out of a white woman's womb as a result of a white man having been in that womb sexually. And this baby is born. And the baby cries out, now it's breathing. And the baby is here. And the baby is white, classified as white. He is a white baby. That baby does not practice racism. You can't accuse that baby, logically speaking, of practicing racism. The baby isn't doing anything but just yelling and asking for help. And should get help. Oh, yes. The baby should get help. I mean, if it's a black person standing there and the baby starts coughing or choking or something like that, you help that baby. Why? Because somebody helped you. That's the law of compensation.
Okay.
Don't get away from that. This is all about compensatory law, laws of the universe. Mm-hmm. Black people should not be in the business of violating laws of the universe. In its best form.
Best form, all right.
Yes. So those are two categories. Okay. Now, what does the code say? What about the other white people who are not babies and who are not senile? According to the code, and here's the punchline, every white person who is able, underline able, to be a white supremacist in 2019 should be expected to be one, suspected to be one. Why? Because you don't have any evidence that the person is not one, and in a system of white supremacy, since there's no master list of who is a white supremacist and who is not, as far as I know, there's no master list. There's no list you can rely on. Then it's logical for every victim of racism to suspect that any white person who is able to be one probably is one. You have to do that. That is an absolute must. Logically speaking, it's not personal, it's business. And you can tell white people that. You know, a person that you work with and whatnot. If the person asks you straight up, well, do you think that I'm a racist? You say, Jack, I suspect you could be one. And he would say, well, why would you suspect that I'm a racist? And you've been working with me for 10, 15 years and all like that? I said, because I don't have any proof that you're not one. And in a world dominated by racism, you know, I don't have any proof that you're a racist. I don't have any proof that you're not a racist. But somebody is a racist, and it might be you. Because nobody's really working on a list of who is a racist and who is not a racist. What else can I do, Jack? You say, well, I never thought you thought like that. Well, I have to think like that, Jack. Stop and think about it yourself. If the situation were reversed, how do you know? How is it for anybody to know, another white person to know that you are not a racist? Unless there's some type of proof that you are not in a system of white supremacy where racism dominates everything that everybody does.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And finally, Mr. Fuller says, Mr. Fuller, should non-white people look for and invest time and energy looking for white people who are not racist?
No, what you do is suspect every white person who is able to be one, but then that's why you need a code. How do you interact with white people who you suspect are racist? You interact with them by asking them to do constructive things, and then measure whether or not they do things that are constructive or non-constructive, because that's the only measure you got.
Okay.
Either they're going to do something that hurts you, or they're going to do something that helps you. Now, that doesn't take them out of the racist suspect list because they're doing something to help you, because they're in position to help you. That's what white supremacy means. So they are in position to help you or harm you. So you don't even think about whether or not they're racist or not, because you've already concluded that most likely they are. Mm-hmm. If you walk into the door doing that, you see a white face, and you see that person is able to tell one color from another. That puts them on the racist suspect list right there.
All right.
The person can tell one color from another.
Focus and concentrate, or concentrate and focus, has been our topic of discussion today. But TalkTameRadio.com, we go where you go. Download the TalkTameRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Fuller. And we've been deep today. Whew, and very, very good. 1-877-932-9766 or 7 Mr. Bobby at 7 Mr. Bobby at BOBBY at gmail.com is how you can get in contact with me. But it is at this particular time that we have Mr. Fuller speak about his book. And if you've been with us this entire 2 hours, you've found out how this book is addressed, and this is very important, to the individual person, individual code, this person. And Mr. Fuller will explain that. Mr. Fuller?
Yes, you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of what the book is about. And the title is kind of long and complicated. You might think that the book is difficult to read, but it really isn't. But I had to keep that title because the title was necessary to describe what I wrote the book for and the frame of reference that I'm using. It's called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And it's strictly a concept for what I say is the missing concept in the whole discussion about race and racism and what to do about it. The emphasis on everything that I've written in the textbook for victims of white supremacy is about what to do about it, not just how painful the system of racism is, how much damage it has done and is doing, but what the individual person can do and not do each and every day in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Just sets of do's and don'ts and explanations of why you don't do this or why you don't say that, and suggestions about what to do and say, not just about what not to do, but what to do. And I think that everybody, and the code even recommends this, the book, that everybody should be writing code about wherever you happen to be, because people's circumstances are different, and the code can't cover everybody's circumstances. It kind of generalizes, but there are different customs in different places and whatnot. So you say what works best with in every situation without doing unjust harm. See, so that's the criteria for everything that's written in the textbook for victims of racism.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
What works best under every circumstance? Because you never want to make any mistakes. You make a mistake, the white supremacists are going to exploit it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, so you have to we'll all make mistakes.
Yes.
But we'll try to minimize them, and that's what the book is designed to help each and every individual non-white person do. It's written for the non-white people of this entire planet.
Okay.
Get it by going to producejustice.com.
All righty. This comes from Gus. He said, Mr. Spoiler, good morning. I've recently heard someone make a statement that pertains to black people being truthful with their beliefs and views on racism and other matters when talking to white people. This sentiment states that if you really want to know what a black person truly believes about anything, including racism, put them in front of a white person or white people, because black people will lie to each other, but not to white people. This may also suggest that black people are fearful of white people, which may lead to them to react by telling truths or untruths about their feelings on racism. I want to know, Mr. Fuller, what is your opinion on this matter, and how should black people conduct themselves and respond as individuals when the subject of racism is brought to a discussion among a room full of white people? Thank you for taking my question.
Well, in the first place, so that black people won't be nervous, because black people are going to be super nervous, even those who claim that they are not. Oh, yes. That's the force of white supremacy. There is a difference in how black people interact with each other when white people are around. Oh, yes, we all know that. We pretend that we don't, but we do. Okay? So, because particularly if white people get themselves involved, it's going to be a whole different thing altogether. Altogether, that's going to be a whole different thing. So, if you can agree, white people and non-white people all over the world should agree that everybody says exactly what they think. The white person who says he thinks black people are just naturally inferior, say, sorry about that, buddy, but you just ain't up. You people, all you black people, by nature, you're animals. You're not even human. I mean, you got to face it. You don't like it, but I'm telling you the truth. I mean, I put you to a test in every way that I could. I tried to act like you were human beings. I mean, you ain't human beings. You ain't got it. None of you got it. I've been all over the world. Ain't none of you black people got it. You just ain't got it. I mean, a white man is different. A white woman is different. And we're not just different because the way we look. We are different in everything that we do. You people are this and that, and I've heard this from white people, all right, one way or another. And, either through what they write or what they say on television or in the radio back in the old days and all like that. And I always say, well, he's saying what he thinks. So let's put it to a test, okay? Whatever kind of test he wants to put it to. Now, if a white person, a lot of white people will say that, I put it to every test that you can name. I've given black people every kind of chance in the world to prove that they are worthy of any kind of regard or even courtesy and whatnot. And they have failed every test every time. There are a lot of white people who believe that. All right, so say it if you believe it, because that's the first step. We need truth from everybody.
Yes.
If people can't tell the truth, there ain't no point in having a meeting. Everybody's just sitting there acting. And I've seen so many such circumstances. In fact, just about every circumstance I've seen where black people and white people were interacting with each other, more dishonesty than you can shake a stick at. And if they stop being dishonest and start telling it the way that they see it, then there's nothing. Everything breaks down then because it's going to lead to an argument and a fight. But I'm saying we should be at a point now in 2019 where everybody can speak their absolute, just how they see it. And then at the end of every conference, where everybody says exactly what they want to say, what they really think, both black people and white people, without shouting, without name calling, these have got to be the rules of it. Mm-hmm. So you've got to have a code for it.
Yes.
For interacting with white people in a white-black setting. We don't have a code for that. And that is no cursing, no discourtesy. Everybody will be addressed as Mr. and Mrs. and whatnot, or whatever names they want to be called. No name calling, no shouting and whatnot, but just do business. I mean, even the mafiosa, when they sit around the table, I mean, hey, these are people who have been killing each other and planning on doing some more. But they sit there, and the white supremacists, who are a criminal organization, they do the same thing among themselves. They kill each other and all like that. But when it comes to sitting around the table and talking about what they're going to do about black people, they are very courteous, like the Corleones in Godfather 1. I think we can come here and reason together, and if the Tatalias will go along, I'm willing to go along with whatever. Tatalia lost a son. I mean, because I had Tatalia's son killed, all right, and I lost a son because Tatalia had my son, Santino, killed. But, that goes with the business, all right, of this criminal organization. We understand that, but now that we're getting on another plane, I mean, it ain't personal, it's business. White supremacy is a business. So we come to the table the same way when we talk to white people. And we understand that the hostility is still there, but we say, for right now, let's see if we can move the needle on something. We can agree on something, all right?
Yeah.
Where everybody does a little better than ordinary and whatnot. Everybody comes out. I mean, even though we're still dealing with a criminal organization, we know that. Ain't no point in shouting at it and getting mad and foaming at the mouth. We can talk about it. Everybody say what they got to say and say how we can kind of relieve the situation at this particular point.
Okay, well, that's going to have to be a good place to leave it because we are out of time for this week. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio, and radio the way it should be heard. Thanks for listening. Thank you for all your calls and your Gmails. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for the discussion, and we will see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com.